Here's another one. Despite all the energy issues that are happening right now, of course, Washington Democrats are attempting to, I mean, for lack of better terms, ban at some point within the next decade, ban the usage of cars that aren't electric. And if you needed another argument against why, first of all, Washington, just the fact that it even exists is just, oh man, it's one of those fucking entities that should be, it is a literal swamp and it should be sunk into it and, or rather eliminated. But as documented here by Chris from Blaze says, Jay Inslee signed a bill last week that sets a target for all vehicles of the model year 2030 or later that are sold, purchased, or registered in the state to be electric. On or before December 31st, 2023, the Interagency Electric Vehicle Coordinating Council, what the fuck is that, shall complete a scoping plan. That's a fake. All right, so it's bureaucracy. Shall complete a scoping plan for achieving this 2030 target. The bill was passed as part of a $16.9 billion Move Ahead Washington package signed by Inslee on Friday. The governor said this legislation will combat climate change by reducing greenhouse emissions. I support, again, the elimination of Washington State and Washington, D.C., for that matter, or the government there that is. Really, I support that really in every single state, for that matter. Again, I'd rather the federal government be eliminated because I don't want to share a government with any of these crack smokers that live in these uber leftist areas and vote for policies as such. Transportation in our states is our state's largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. There is no way to talk about climate change without talking transportation. This is what Inslee said. This package will move us away from transportation system. Our grandparents imagined and towards the, wait a minute, what? Away from the transportation system our grandparents imagined and towards the transportation systems of our grandchildren dream of. I'm not sure. I'm not dreaming of that. I have, grandparents, rest in peace. I'm not interested in that sort of transportation support or approach. Democrats have frequently criticized transportation as one of the largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions. According to the EPA, there's been a 22.9% increase in fossil fuel emissions from transportation between 1990 and 2019, the largest increase of any economic sector. The sweeping legislation includes funding for several infrastructure projects designed to facilitate a larger transition to electric vehicles, including building thousands of new electric vehicle charging stations. The transportation package, so this is literally the state stealing money from people and then using that to butt in a market, transportation, and really force and incentivize this type of stuff. This is the part of the regulatory body as well as the incentives that people seem to lose sight of. Like I've said, to act like we have a completely marketized system really in any regard is just dumb, and it's completely false. Markets aren't free. You have daily, I'm talking literally daily, but states and the federal government use taxpayer money to prop up certain parts of the industries every day. And they're rerouting funds to fund this project. And sometimes in the name of infrastructure, sometimes it's not. And what that does is it creates an artificial aspect of the market, because it's not like the market itself or competitors or people that are trying to be innovators came up with this. No, you paid them to do that, and you used stolen funds in order to make that appear as such. The transportation package, as it says, will also fund 4 new hybrid electric ferries, 25 transit electrification projects, and free fares for riders 18 and younger on public transportation systems. The law was endorsed by environmental groups that seek to end the use of fossil fuels. The war in Ukraine and the burden of the high gas prices on families demonstrate the importance of ending our dependence on gasoline. That has nothing to do with it. It's so disingenuous. And preparing for an all-electric transportation future. That's bullshit. They're trying to blame this Russia shit, not blaming these types of policies right here. See, this is what government is good at. Government will create a problem, and then what they'll do is they'll come in and say, I'm here to fix the actual problem that they caused. So when you look at the inability, again, there's two sides of that, where you have the government, again, propping up the electric side, and as well as these green types of energy, so wind, solar as well, and they use taxpayer dollars to subsidize those particular industries. People think that in the last, let's say, half decade, even in Texas, people think wrongfully that gas is where a lot of the literal state funding and state subsidizing, most of it's going. That it couldn't be anything further from the truth. It's actually going into wind and solar. Don't take my word for anything. Just go look the shit up. This is where all the newer investments are going. So they're trying to prop that part of the industry. And again, they aren't talking about, when you say green or renewables, they're not talking about nuclear. Keep that in mind. It's only basically wind, solar, and maybe some hydro. The law was endorsed by environmental groups that seek to end the use of fossil fuels, is what they say. So government created this problem, propped up a part of the industry. Hell, half the time when it came to like fracking, and you know what happens with this fucking pipeline and things of that nature, they have not really, let's say this, they have really prohibited the further development of oil and gas. I've said this when the whole gas price thing happened. The fact that America, even though it is very well capable of producing its own oil and gas, the fact that it imports really anything in that industry from other countries like Russia is nonsense. It is a self-inflicted wound. It is something that the government themselves created in terms of a problem. It's not because people aren't willing. It's not because the oil and gas isn't here. That has nothing to do with the problem here. It's simply that the hyper-emphasis, definitely in the last decade, of these other forms of energy, and the flat out making it illegal in some cases to even drill for the shit, has put you in a position where you are now, in some cases, for at least, what is it, like 10% of it is coming from, like, in terms of the energy usage, is coming from fucking Russia. Or I think in America, I could be a little off on those numbers, but the fact that it's even anything in terms of dependency is nonsense. So they'll do that and then come by, the government that is, and say, well, here, we're going to fix the problem. And this is their idea of fixing it. By targeting 2030 as the end date for the sales of gasoline cars, Clean Cars 2030 gives confidence to consumers, automakers, utilities, investors, and no, it doesn't. It's artificial. It's you saying that you cannot do this, and therefore people that do want to invest can't. So they have to invest in that do want to invest in different forms of energy, or rather be what type of cars that they're making. They have to do it in a way that more so is legal. The government is a piece of shit. And if you are one of those environmental pieces of dog water, that pieces of dog shit, you are dog water as well, that are trying to use the state to implement your own energy ideas, you're a piece of shit. I don't give a fuck that you care to claim so much about all of this climate bullshit. You're a piece of dog shit at the end of the day. You're an evil person because all you're doing is utilizing the state to implement further your ideals, right? So I guess the people aren't moving fast enough for you to adopt electric cars, which I have no desire to drive one of fucking those. Either way, only way I consider it is if Elon personally, for free, sent me a Tesla truck. The one of them new, like the Saba joints that look like something from fucking the future. I consider driving one of them bitches, but I got to get it for free. So if Elon personally gives me one of those, I'll drive it. But aside from that, I have no desire to sit up here and get an electric vehicle. The fact that it has to be this one size fits all to the point to where they will completely destroy an industry. And I think a lot of this has to do, though not exclusively, definitely states like Texas who have big industries that are tapped in, or rather into this industry. I think a lot of this has to do with trying to punish them. So you'll see this makes its way to the, even in the federal level, it's already happened actually. You remember when we had that energy issue with, though it didn't last long, it was severely over exaggerated with the whole electrical grid thing. Abbott had to ask, and Abbott's a piece of shit as well. Abbott had to ask the federal government to use his own energy. I covered this on this channel because you only can, by federal law, use a certain amount of whatever because of emissions and shit, some EPA bullshit. And he had to ask them to basically use other forms of use their own industry, which is insane that the federal government even has such a power. But you can't have something like that existing and then act like all of this is left up to the market. It's bullshit.
You just listened to a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake, which is live throughout the week at 12 p.m. Central on youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. Be sure to check out my website, ericdjuly.com, so you can stay up to date with everything it is that I'm doing. You can also become a member and get access to a bunch of cool perks and exclusive content, which includes a social media hub where you can interact with myself and other members. It even has an app that you can get, which is now live in the Google and Apple stores.